Now, you say in a lot of your writing that global warming is a scam. Why do you think that?
Well, if you study all the papers of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, if you study everything their scientists have done, it all boils down to a claim that carbon dioxide, CO2 in the atmosphere, put there by our burning of fossil fuels, is going to turn the climate of Earth into an oven, and we're all going to bake and die. Well, that's sheer nonsense. We have burning fossil fuels for 100 years. And what have we done so far? We might have raised the temperature by 1/10 of 1 degree, maybe. CO2 is a natural compound in the atmosphere. It's not a pollutant.
No, it's
Plants have to have it.
It's like water vapor.
Every time I breathe out, I create it. It is no big deal, and it's certainly not going to end the world.
No, if you believed what the global warming freaks are saying, it's something so evil, but it's no different than basic water vapor. I mean, it's just a substance that's out there. But I got to ask you, because there is so much science out there that's saying that this is purely hypothetical nonsense, why did it become such a widely held belief? Why is global warming so, I don't know, easily embraced by people in Hollywood, by people in the media?
Well, it's the most amazing part of the story, really. How did it become such this huge accepted scam? I mean, it started off with some environmentalists and some one-world politicians at the UN who had World Earth Day in 1970, and out of that they finally managed to create this IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change at the UN. They claimed, of course, that that was had something to do with science. All it was an environmental advocacy group. Then Al Gore learned a little bit about CO2 in college. One course learned a little, and all of a sudden he became an expert. So he becomes vice president, the UN starts foisting this thing on us, and the media, which loves a crisis, loves to tell us that the world is coming to an end, the media jumped aboard, and once the media was aboard, so you got the UN, you got Al Gore, you got the media, what are the politicians going to do? They follow.
What's interesting is almost with every issue, with almost every issue, you're allowed some kind of debate or dissent, and this is worse, actually, worse than any kind of religion where you're not allowed to dissent. You can't say anything without being called an idiot or crazy.
It's become a religion. That's exactly what it's become, an environmentalist religion. And of course, green and environmentalism is a wonderful thing. I'm an environmentalist, but wait a minute. You're not going to turn me into an extremist, and you're not going to get me to tell a lie to try to accomplish an environmental goal. That's exactly what they're doing.
Speaking of goal, what does a hockey stick have to do with all this?
Well, this goes back to the start of it all. A professor at an American university named Michael Mann created a graph of temperatures through millennium flatlining and then shooting up at the end, the shape of a hockey stick. And the UN panel said, "Ooh, love that."
Yeah.
And they kind of made it their Bible, and it became the cornerstone of their whole campaign. Now it has been proved, without a shadow of a doubt, to be built on absolutely bad science. You can put any data into that formula, and it'll come out a hockey stick no matter what.
Well, you know, John,
the whole thing was manipulated.
John, I'm actually looking forward to the return of the Ice Age, because I know that's going to be the next catastrophe, probably in the next decade. We got to run. Thank you, John Coleman, founder of the Weather Channel, my favorite channel, aside from Fox News Channel.
Interesting clip, huh? Now let me give you a little bit of background to that Al Gore piece. Understand this. You've heard of Bernie Madoff. Have you heard of Bernie Madoff? Have you heard of Goldman Sachs? Could you imagine Bernie Madoff, Goldman Sachs, and Al Gore starting a carbon credit exchange in Chicago? Where's Obama from? Is he even from this country? Another story. But once again, in Chicago, a carbon credit exchange where the UN says, well, you in the United States will have to buy your carbon credits from this exchange. So Al Gore's going to benefit from every carbon footprint. Look at how I'm using their terms. That's the problem with our society. We listen to these people, and before you know it, we're using their terms. You're being ripped off. Your family's being ripped off by these globalist bankers. Now you're going to pay a tax because everything you do has a carbon footprint, and you're going to have to buy your carbon credits from Al Gore, Bernie Madoff, and Goldman Sachs. Haven't you had enough? So here's a little piece, just so you understand how much these bankers love you, okay, and how they pull the strings from behind. Here's one, and it's about you. Are you for sale?
The state of the union is not good.
Our trade deficit is too large.
We must not go back to unwise spending.
This is America.
George Orwell once wrote that the great enemy of clear language is insincerity. When there is a gap between one's real and one's declared aims, one turns, as it were, instinctively to long words and exhausted idioms, like a cuttlefish spurting out ink. You've probably heard confusing phrases like the trade deficit, the falling dollar, the national debt, unfunded liabilities, and so on, which all sound vague and actuarial and vaguely, well, not me. The reality behind these accounting phrases is perfectly monstrous. When someone, a foreigner say, loans money to the American government, what are they getting in return? Well, they are getting promises of interest payments and eventual repayment of the principal. Where does your government get this money? The government is not a business. It does not generate profits in the free market. So where does it get the money to repay its creditors? Are you beginning to understand that it is not dollars that are being sold, or bonds, or agency debt, or treasuries, or anything like that? Where is your government going to get the money to pay off its creditors? It's not pieces of paper, or contracts, or computer bits that are being sold. There is only one thing that the government has to sell. Governments have only one asset that they can use as collateral. Your leaders are selling you. When China lends $800 billion to your government, what they get in return is a guarantee that $10,000 plus interest will be taken from your family at gunpoint and shipped overseas. When a farmer gets a loan from a bank, he uses his livestock as collateral. It is the milk and meat his cows will produce in the future that he will use to pay off his loan. The bank is buying a share in his cows. You are the livestock that your leaders use as collateral. The leaders that you cheer for and throw parades for and drop balloons behind and donate money to are selling you to Chinese rulers, to the Japanese, to the Nigerians, to South American drug lords with accounts in the Caribbean banking centers, to Russia, to Korea, to Egypt, to Colombia, to Chile, to the Philippines, to Malaysia, and anyone else who is willing to give them a few dollars in return for the blood, sweat, and toil of your future. The flag that you praise and the anthems that you sing and the rulers that you weep and kneel before have as much loyalty to you as a plantation owner had to his slaves. And sadly, plantation slaves had more pride than we do. Plantation slaves did not generally praise their masters for selling them off, for auctioning off the lives, hopes, dreams, and futures of their own little children. We can understand that cattle may lick the hand of the farmer who lowers an axe to its neck, because cattle are dumb beasts that cannot comprehend their real relationship with the farmer and his imminent plans for them. What is our excuse? When we chant, USA, 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 when we cheer and bow and beg and scrape and sing and weep with joy that some new farmer now presides over the wholesale dismantling and sale of our family's futures, when we love with obsessive emptiness the leaders who laugh while they auction us off to every tin pot dictator and stockbroker the world over, what is our excuse? Has our pride been so broken that we lunge with pathetic joy at every new silver-tongued demagogue who pretends to care for us even a tiny little bit? In the future, our children will demand to know why we knelt and cheered as they were sold off on the auctioneer's block.